Board. I'll open the meeting of the Regional Strategy and Policy Committee for October. And before we get underway, I just want to reiterate the issues in relation to the fact that this meeting is one of the meetings that is video recorded, so it can be televised out to the community. But the cameras only pick up those people sitting around the table and those people presenting at the black table in the front there. So if you're in the audience, you've got no concerns about being picked up by the cameras. So item number one is apologies, and we have apologies is from the Mayor, Member Chris McDonald. So I take it that Leanne Mamani is replacing Chris McDonald. And for lateness, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Mike Lee, and for lateness. So I'll move that they be received. They'll be seconded by Councillor Philippi.
Yeah, but also through you, Chair, that I'll be leaving early.
Okay, thank you. So just put that down. In addition, you'll second the motion. Yep. I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Declare that carried. Declaration of interests. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Confirmation of minutes.
Yes, I have a declaration, 14 and 15. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the submissions. Yep. Okay, so then confirmation of minutes. I'll move that we confirm the ordinary minutes of the meeting held on Thursday, the 6th of August 2015 as a true and correct record. Seconded by Councillor Penrose. I'll put that motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. There are no petitions. We now move to public input, and we have changed slightly the precedence. Okay, we right? Okay, oh, sorry. So first presenter will be Mary Dawson, who's the CEO, I think that's position, of the Auckland Regional Migrant Services. That's ARMS Trust. And Dame Susan Devoy. Welcome to you, Dame Susan, as well. So if you come up to the table and presentation, and that okay? We have 5 minutes for the presentation, then we'll move into questions where we'll no doubt elicit more information for the information of councillors.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And thank you, councillors, for this opportunity to once again present to you on behalf of the ARMS Trust. Just move it along.
Yes. Yes.
So I just want to put up there very clearly for you a comparison, some comparative data from one of the cities of Australia, Sydney, where migrant and refugee flows accelerated about 15 years ahead of New Zealand's, and migrant resource centres like ARMS were set up in the early 1990s. There are indeed 8 migrant resource centres in the Western Sydney area. You can see for yourselves some of the figures that are relevant, and the fact that West Sydney is of a comparable size population-wise to Auckland. Auckland and the ARMS Trust, you can read for yourself, there's a bit of history there, where compared to any of those resource centres in Australia, extremely small, with mainly part-time staff. The point I want to make very clearly here is that the council funding that we've received for the past 12 years has been between 4 to 8% of our income. We have too been funded by MB, Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, for the past 12 years, and we've performed very strongly on our contracts. MB's decision made earlier this year was to reduce and now to cut ARMS funding, which is due to their change in priorities. This latest cut, in effect 27% of ARMS income, has the potential to impact hugely on the funding of our core staff salaries and infrastructure costs. This comes on the top of tight cost-cutting, diversification of our income streams, and highly successful grant seeking, including from local boards, and the maintenance of high performance and credibility. The track record with our Auckland Council for the Arms Trust, we believe, has been impressive. We have contributed not through submissions only, but through the actual work that is undertaken by our staff to the Auckland plan and to many of the local board plans. You can see the list of applications that we have made and been successful with. And I draw your attention to the fact that we have also co-delivered several ethnic community forums with council staff over the years. Generally, our programs, whether they're community development, working with former refugees, or whether they're for new migrants, are widely recognised as highly effective, professional, worth attending, and worth funding. The Arms Board undertook over the last 12 months a thorough review of its strategic priorities for the next 3 years. Little thinking, however, that the organisation would receive a major bombshell as a result of MB's review of its funding priorities from January 2016. The Arms Trust purpose, our objectives and our activities all speak to and deliver on exactly the key principles of the Empowering Communities approach now being rolled out across Council. This slide shows just some examples of how we believe that we align closely with the ECA through the variety of activities and the variety of relationships that we have in the community of Auckland. In summary, given ARM's strong credibility as a service provider, as a community development partner, and as a facilitator of strong service provider networks and community engagement capabilities, we believe that the organisation can be an invaluable community partner to the Auckland Council under the Empowered Communities approach. As one of the most super diverse cities in the world, and with migrant numbers increasing, it is essential that Council builds up the city's capacity in terms of empowering its migrant communities, making sure that its services are culturally responsive and collaborative, and being inclusive of ethnic communities and their needs and voices. ARMS can contribute to the Auckland Plan and empower community outcomes, but we need to have a community partnership funding agreement to resource our management and staff and infrastructure at the appropriate level. Our proposal, therefore, it is not for 250k, which is in your memo, in your briefing document. This, indeed, however, is the dollar value of the ARMS MB contract for a full 12 months. That is the sum of money that we are losing through the cessation of the MB contract. At this point of time, and there is an error on this slide that you're looking at, but you'll see the right figures in front of you, the ARMS Board considers that a funding agreement for 175k from Council would enable the stability of the ARMS organisation through the next 9 to 12 months. This would enable ARMS to develop and deliver on a community partnership over the implementation period of the ECA, and at the same time allow ARMS to review and revise its strategic plan, its business model, and its operational structure. In conclusion, now is the time for the Council, not in another year's time when ARMS may have become depleted and destabilised, to reach a common understanding across the Council that it needs a strong regional NGO to provide collaborative leadership to make the most of the opportunities created by the city's multicultural communities, and also to address the many social challenges, needs and disruptions that are part and parcel of supporting successful settlement, integration and intercultural harmony. That is our proposal. We hope that you give it serious consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
I need to apologise that I didn't introduce Dame Susan Devoy, who is one of our co-patrons, the other co-patron being Mayor Len Brown. And I thank Susan for coming today.
Well, in order to kind of give councillors some understanding as to what would be a way forward, maybe I'll just ask, before we have questions, ask Mr Kimpton if he could just outline his thoughts in relation to what's been asked for today.
Sure. So thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. So look, certainly a number of you have expressed interest in this particular topic, and you received a background memo on the facts as we understood them. That was issued to you as early as possible to provide the information that would inform this discussion. So Councillor Wood, as Chair, has asked what an appropriate resolution might look like, apart from thanking ARMS for presenting to their concerns today. So one option, and I'll put this to you, but certainly you'll have the discussion shortly, would be to consider in two respects, well, two actions that maybe staff can assist with. And the first one is to contemplate what sources of funding are available and what trade-offs might exist, because we're working within a fixed budget, so we could give you advice on where those trade-offs might occur with other activities within council. And the second one would be for us to pick up with MB and ARMS further discussion around how we might work together on this particular issue for an important part of Auckland's community. So it'll be along those lines would be my suggestion, but you may also want to consider other suggestions on a resolution.
Well, okay. Well, if you can put together some...
Certainly. So we'll put some words together on that. We just haven't had the chance to do so yet, and that may give you something to then discuss in amongst your own questions of the speakers today.
Right. I've got a question from Councillor Casey. Stage. Is there any other questions? Councillor Filipaina and Councillor Fletcher.
First of all, Mary and Susan, thank you both very much for coming along to the last meeting of the Community Development and Safety Committee, which was back in August and focused on refugees and migrants. And I'm under no illusion, if we'd known at the time that the government was pulling the plug on funding for ARMS, it would have started there in terms of advocacy. And personally, I'm horrified, and I want to know from you both what this means for refugees in Auckland. And we're not just a funder or potential funder, but we're also an advocate. And I would like to know from you the consequences of the decision not to fund for the refugees in Auckland.
You're asking specifically about former refugees? No? You see in front of you two handouts which are about two very strong community development projects. One is the WISE Collective. I think many people in this room, I hope that you know about this. It has a regional reach. It is an empowerment and economic enterprise project for former refugee women. The other projects are the multicultural playgroups, which are particularly set up to bridge new refugee families through the ECE process with their children into mainstream. Now, those are two areas where no one else has worked. No other organisation has been able to work with the refugee communities of Auckland in a multicultural fashion. There are many efforts by individual community groups to meet the needs of their own people, but they are ethnic-specific activities. What we as an organisation endeavours to do is to collaborate with as many organisations as we can, particularly the Auckland Refugee Community Coalition, to deliver community development projects. The loss of this funding impacts on the infrastructure, the core staffing. If we don't have strong, robust management and financial processes and procedures and the kind of leadership that can be provided by an organisation that's been doing this work for a long time, then I have a real concern about the fallout in terms of how well we can continue to maintain our community development work and how we can continue to extend it across the parts of Auckland that need such projects to be successful.
Thanks, Mary. Just a signal to the chair that I would be definitely looking at a B, which signals to the government this council's displeasure at the pooling of the funding.
Okay,
So I'll be
well,
working that up
just-
in the next
just
5
on
minutes.
that though, Councillor Casey, I think, you know, we've got to try and work with the government on this because it is.
Can't hear you,
I mean,
George,
the
sorry.
government's increasing the number of refugees over the next 3 years, I understand. So that's an issue that we have to address. So I think, you know, we, after the last mayoral and the central government forum here, Anne Tolley has now come on board and is having dialogue with Mr Kimpton, and that's working reasonably well at the moment, I think. So I think that is a process that will get benefit. So let's see what comes up from the people that are thinking about the wording now. Maybe you can have a look at it to see if it... if it's
With
satis-
respect, I doubt that that will be in the wording that's being worked up. So I'm very happy to work up a B and have it before the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Filipina.
Thank you, Chair. Well, one of the questions I had has already been answered in regards to the impact on not only the staff but the our community. But I do, however, just want to acknowledge Graham Bodman in regards to the work that he did when the announcement was made and meeting with you, Mary, and I just want to acknowledge both you and you as well, ma'am. My question is, in regards to this, and this is more centred on to Dean. Dean, I'm assuming or I'm hoping that any recommendations that we see now may have at least a mention of the annual plan process in regards to sustainability moving forward into our annual plan for next year. Because I know what you've said, so I'm just putting that on the table. And my question is, will the recommendation at least be included in our annual plan process for next year around our funding for arms?
Correct. Our recommendation would suggest that any funding options discussion, a paper around that would be presented to Finance and Performance.
Cool.
Because it
Yep. No, that's all.
Yep.